Well, I got the surprise of my life today. I've recovered from it, but sort of tragedy striking the project. Basically, I was running a test the other day. I wasn't filming it. Had the engine running, and I was using the brakes, applying the brakes to with the engine, transmission and gear, and then loading the engine up and doing more RPMs and heavier loading just to try to continue breaking the engine in, and more importantly finish the learning tables on the computer so that I had the learned fuel to air ratios across the whole spectrum of vacuum, manifold vacuum, and RPM. So I was working on that, and I got up to around 150-60 horsepower at just under 6,000 RPM, not full throttle still. It was still only about 2/3 throttle, but it was taking about a 75 pounds per hour of fuel, which nets out to about 170 or 80 horsepower. So this engine is super healthy. It's going to make some big numbers. That's only at like 5,400 RPM. All of a sudden I got this big backfire, and just tons of raw fuel squirted out the exhaust system, and then it wouldn't run, it wouldn't idle, and I thought there was something I did wrong on the mapping, because sometimes the learning tables they get unstable. My throttle's not totally even. I'm holding it down, and then my hands are moving slightly, or my feet are moving, and what's happening is the engine starts getting into a bit of an oscillation with the learning mode, where it's adjusting the fuel to air ratio, and then the engine is responding too quickly. So I thought maybe I had something wrong with the software. So today I went and I redid all of the software and double checked all the tables, made a few modifications to the idle control, thinking that may also be contributing to idle instability. And the bottom line was, I tried to turn on the engine and my fuel pressure was low, and then as soon as the fuel pump stopped running, the fuel pressure dropped to 0. So I knew I had a fuel leak somewhere, and I didn't see any fuel leaking anywhere in the engine compartment. And then I had this horrible sinking feeling that I should check the intake manifolds, and lo and behold, cylinder number 2, this intake runner was completely overflowing with fuel, almost spilling out the top. So I just about started to cry, obviously, and I disconnected the fuel electric harnesses and checked, and sure enough, one of the injectors was broken and stuck wide open, and it was one of the high mount injectors. So I've got 19 pound per hour injectors in the front for idle and part throttle, and then 30 pound injectors come in at higher RPM. And so what had happened is I'd loaded up the engine to a higher RPM setting, and it then enabled the second bank of injectors, the high mount injectors, and the cylinder number 2 just stuck open. And so I ended up looking at the spark plugs, and I ended up looking at the pistons, and this cylinder had been washed out with fuel. And then my worst fear was, I'd filled the combustion chamber full of raw fuel, and I tried to compress that, and it would have, damaged the engine. So I took everything apart, found the bad injector, got a compression tester, a quality compression tester, and I've run the numbers. And you got to remember, this is a 288 duration, very high lift, high duration, big overlap cam, so it's not technically going to produce a huge amount of idle compression, but it still produced 180 psi in all 4 cylinders on a cold engine, which is, means this engine is breaking in nicely, in fact. So I'm just so fortunate. So I used a plastic tube, sucked out the fuel slowly, and I ended up, you want to see how much fuel was in that one intake runner? There you go. Basically a cup of fuel was sitting in that intake runner, and of course a lot of fuel had gone through the cylinder head and gone into the exhaust system and contaminated the oxygen sensor. So I'm hoping that my wideband O2 sensor here is not damaged from being soaked in fuel. I know if they're hot and you hit them with water or coolant, they die, but hopefully being saturated with fuel will not have damaged it. So good news is these are Accel, they're Holley brand, but they're made by Accel. So I'm able to get another one on order today and have it tomorrow. And then I should be able to, put this back together, check for fuel leaks before I fire the thing up, and hopefully it'll run smoothly. But I bought a whole bunch of Joey Gibson's break-in oil to replace the oil that's in it, because the oil is now absolutely contaminated with raw fuel, because it leaked into the cylinder. Probably, a cup of fuel has drained past the rings and into the oil. Who knows how much, but more than a small amount. So tragedy, but I'm back in the game, hopefully this weekend. So just fuck, who would have thought an injector would stick open? First time it fires, the pintle opens, it stays open. Ha! Dumping raw fuel in. So, I'm going to just double check all of the injectors and double check their operation, double check for leaks, and then hopefully this will never happen again. This is a freak occurrence. It might have been something, mechanically, and the injector died, or maybe somehow some dirt got in there and got it to stick open. I don't know, but holy shit. Anyway, so that's it for today. I was making great progress programming in this thing, and looking forward to getting the windows actually in the next 2 weeks as well. Getting all the Lexan windows put in the car, coloring, recoloring, and getting all the interior components sprayed this month, and then start installing the interior. And then once some of the interior is in, certainly once the window's in, then I can permanently put the dash in. Then I can get the rest of the wiring done, and then I can start pulling the rest of the interior together. Which shouldn't take a massive amount of time. Obviously, the mechanical stuff and the bodywork and the painting and the programming and the electrical is just where I think the vast majority of this project effort has to go. So anyway, so that's my story. Oh, the other thing is, I've run the engine hard enough that you can see I'm getting a slight gold color to the exhaust headers, the stainless exhaust headers, and they have been internally coated in ceramic. And so I was hopeful that they wouldn't blue over too much, get too dark and get too discolored. I don't mind a little bit of gold color. It looks like they've been used, which is nice, but you're definitely seeing the benefit of having the internal ceramic coating and keeping the temperatures down. So I'm happy about that. Oh, and I have a tiny little coolant leak right here where I've threaded the this fitting into the this 90-degree and fitting into this coolant flange. For some reason it's tiny amount of leaking, so I'm going to be dancing that one together and trying to chase a few of these little gremlins as this thing comes together. Long-winded, eh? Sorry about that. Okay, ciao.